So I am going to plan to go about 55 minutes, and then we'll have questions.
Okay, so welcome everyone. This is Ashish Gakrey, founder of HR Shaper. Welcome to global webinar of HR Shaper. This is the fourth webinar with a global speaker and audience delegates we are doing. We did run global series on employee engagement during work from home. That was done before 1 month, and we were able to get HR leader from 30 to 40 countries, and they did share input what they were doing during that time when actually this COVID was on peak. Our partner ManuArora, who's the founder and co-partner of Proventus HR. Proventus HR is a partner in this segment. They are basically HR consultancy. They will also just do the introduction right now. HR Shaper is 6-year-old non-profit organization. We keep doing event, gathering, webinar and all. We are globally presence and good presence in India, and in addition to India, all over world here. And I will hand over to ManuArora to do the introduction, and welcome Dev, and we can start the session then. Before that, Dev, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining. We are so grateful. We would say we have grown up, and we have grown up reading your article while making our HR in the corporate field. Thank you, Dev. Thank you so much. Manu, over to you now.
Thank you, Ashish. And a very warm welcome to you, Dave, and to all our audience from across the world. Ashish did say that we have folks from all over the globe coming together to get this opportunity. I know it's very late for our audience from the eastern parts of the world, and perhaps very early morning, including yourself. But none of us really wanted to miss this opportunity of being with you today. It's an absolute privilege and an honor. So thank you very much for that. I'm confident, all of our friends with us today, they have either studied or learned from and practiced the concepts of HR business partner frameworks, HR competencies, and various leadership and organizational effectiveness topics that you have so beautifully and simply put together for all of us over all these years. I can definitely speak for myself and my colleague RK here that in the early 2000s, we had the opportunity to pilot and shape the HRBP role for one of India's largest IT consulting organizations. And the HRBP model, as well as the HR competencies, they were sort of the Bible to refer to. So thank you very much for that. I think it was just about the time, and it couldn't have been better in terms of the timing. We at Proventus believe that organizational and individual learning really happens best through experiences, and especially experiences, that push us against the wall. They force us to recalibrate ourselves and innovate, right? And then that's what's happening with all of us today. We have been witness and and perhaps been a part of some of the greatest post World War II VUCA events, and we've not just survived them, but we've also learned to thrive, in them, with every outcome. I don't think we have anything to be scared of, right? We will continuously learn from this experience as well and innovate. And we are here again today to learn and hear from you, Dave, on what the future holds for HR, right? And what will make the HR strategy of tomorrow more effective, both in deployment as well as realization. I think learning is the key for all of us. As Ashish said, you don't really need a formal introduction in terms of, what Dave is all about. The whole world is eager to hear from you. And thank you very much again for being here with us. And on this note, I'll hand over back to you, Dave, to take us through the session and, share your knowledge and experience with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Manu, thank you very much. What a privilege for me to be with you, and Proventus, thank you for hosting and sponsoring this. I owe a special thanks to Ashish for coordinating and becoming my email friend. We've emailed back and forth dozens of times, and he's very responsive and very kind. I should say, I haven't done this before. I should start. You said, my work is the Bible. Let me suggest there is a real Bible we should use more often than my work. So
Absolutely.
I don't mean to impose that faith on anyone else, but there is a real Bible we should use. I want to welcome you from wherever you are in the world into my office. This is something we can't do when we go to an event, we're in a hotel or a conference center, and we don't have the privilege of being as personal. And so welcome to my office. You get to see the clutter. You get to see my Bible. You get to see a little bit of the mess that's real. That's new, and I'm so delighted. I am especially delighted, thanks to Proventus and Ashish, to join many of you, many from India. And I'm so privileged every time I have an opportunity to work with those from India. You have in India some incredible legacy HR success. I know TV Rao and others, and I'll shout out TV Rao's name many times, have been so thoughtful and so creative in shaping an HR agenda. And my dear colleague and my partner for decades, Wayne Brockbank, has been so influential in teaching me about India. He's taken the lead with the India work, and so I haven't done as much in India, and Wayne continues to do brilliant work. So I am just delighted to join you this evening in your time, and thank you for being up so late. Worldwide time zones make the world very different. So I'm going to share my screen and walk you through some materials and hope the screen share will work so that we can look at some materials together and a discussion. And let me just get a thumbs up, if I could, from someone that you're able to see my screen. I hope you are. Good. We're set. And I'm going to talk for probably about 50 to 55 minutes and go through some material that I hope is helpful to you. I'm going to start with the end in mind. If you want a copy of these slides, there's a QR code and a site where you can get a copy. I'll leave that up for just a moment as I start with the racial protest. These are difficult times around the world, in India, in America, in Europe, in Latin America, and yet it's a time where HR has an incredible opportunity to make a difference. And I want to talk about the HR future and what are some ideas that will help us create value. I'm going to cover the first two pieces pretty quickly, kind of an assumption about our future and what we need to understand, a little bit the COVID response and the crisis that we're coming out of. And then I in particular want to provide each of you a fairly simple framework with 5 principles that we should pay attention to, 3 deliverables, and 2 agendas. Now I say that with hesitation. Remember, it's a simple framework, 5, 3, and 2, and yet I am going to cover way too much. And I know every time I do a presentation, I talk about too much. I should tell a story because many of you in India may know of the gentleman who was one of my primary mentors. When I started teaching at the University of Michigan, before any of you were born, it was 1982, I had the privilege of joining what was called our executive faculty, our executive program. The head of that program was a colleague named C.K. Prahalad. And I'm not sure how many of you, I'm sure most of you have heard of C.K. Prahalad. I'm not sure how many have had the privilege of meeting and working with him. Just a quick anecdote which will set the pace at which I'll go. I was a young faculty, and C.K. was older than me, and the other 3 faculty were older. And C.K. called me in and he said, Dave, you're going to teach the organization, people, talent issues in our executive program. I'm delighted to have you here. Dave, what is your point of view about talent and leadership and organization in HR? And I looked at CK and I said, here's my research. And he said, I didn't ask for your research. What's your point of view? And I said, here's my research. I will cover this. And he said, for the 3rd time, I don't care about your research. I want you to have a point of view that will help others gain their point of view. And I wasn't exactly sure what he meant. And I said, here's my research. And he stood up and he said, thank you. And he did something that was incredibly rude. He turned nice. And by turning nice, and if you've ever met or known CK, he and Gakrey were 2 of the most gracious people in the world. When he turned nice, it showed me he didn't respect my ideas. And I knew it. And so I spent a year struggling and working, trying to create a point of view about people and leadership and organizations that would help others get their point of view. And a year later, I called CK in. And I said, CK, I'm going to share with you my point of view. And he said, okay. And I shared it. And he said, I disagree. And I said, you're wrong. And he said, you're in HR. You have no theory background. And I said, you're in strategy. You have no theory at all. You just make it up. And we argued for about 30 or 40 minutes with love and respect. And then he stood up and he put his arms around me and he said, now, welcome to the team. You have a point of view. By the way, for those who know CK or know of his work, that was one of the greatest signs of respect that I've ever received. And I'm sure TV Rao and others have had the same affirmation from people like CK. And CK told me at the point, he said, Dave, never be ashamed of too much content. Never be ashamed that you have ideas that are rich and full. And I have followed that. I am going to give you too much content. And I wish the tragedy of all tragedies is we lost CK a number of years ago at age 69 when he had so much more to offer the world. So with that background, I've got too much content. I honor those who've gone before me. And let me start with a very simple question. I've done this as a polling question, but it's simple. What's the most important thing that HR or business leaders can give an employee? And I often do a poll. A sense of belief, the ability to become better, to belong, all the above, or none of the above. I've done a poll in probably 20 countries in the last, that's not that true, 10 countries in the last 12 weeks. 70 to 80% say number 4, all of the above. And about 2 or 3% say number 5, all of the above. And 70 to 80% are wrong. The answer is number 5. The most important thing we can give an employee is an organization that succeeds in the marketplace. Let me say that again. It challenges my fundamental assumption or mental model about HR. HR is not about helping employees have belief or becoming better or belonging. It's about helping your organization succeed in the marketplace. Now, success, and I've had an argument with one of my colleagues in our consulting firm. He said, Dave, people interpret that as being financially successful. That's not the issue. The issue is serving customers, serving investors, serving communities. And again, TV Rao has some videos that I've seen that are incredible. Creating a purpose-driven organization. But unless and until we succeed in our marketplace, there is no workplace. There is no belief. There is no become. There is no belong. And our job in HR is to make sure that the things that we do enable our organization to perform well with our customers, with our investors, and in our communities. And so we often ask the question, who does HR serve? Who are our key customers? Who do we serve? Who do we give value to? What I often find, or many of us in HR, because of our assumptions, think below the line. We serve the employees. We help them have competence and commitment. We serve our line managers. We help them implement our strategy and build good organizations. I believe the true customers of HR are the customers of the company. Our job in HR is to serve those below the line, the employees, the managers, the organization inside the company, but to make sure that the service we render creates value for the real customers. Am I connecting my work in HR to the customer who chooses to buy my product, to the investors, either through debt or through equity, or if I'm part of a global firm, through corporate funding, to the social citizens and the responsibility we share across, and I keep trying to say India, but I know, Ashish, we have people from all over the world. Am I serving all of those above the line? That assumption is fundamental to what we do. It's that HR is not about HR. It's about creating value outside in to those above the line that we serve. Now, what has the COVID crisis meant? We see the headlines. I was going to pull up some India headlines, but these are all over the world, from India in the Far East and China to Europe to Russia. Just did a session. I just did a session in Nepal. These crises are everywhere, and they're forcing all of us to learn some new words. I thought social distancing might be a disease rather than a health factor. I didn't know what a global pandemic was. I had never seen an N95 mask. I didn't know what flattening the curve meant. It could have been a baseball or a term or some other sports term. Sheltering in space. All of these new terms and ideas are creating an enormous amount of unrest and uncertainty. So this slide is a little longer, and let me spend a minute describing what it says. The context that I just talked about is the kingdom. Content is king. What I do and the content that I bring as an individual is so critical. But the context in which I do it is the kingdom. This is not about gender, men or women. It's content is what is critical. The context, the setting, is more critical. So in this coronavirus and other crises that come up, and it's so tragic to say, in the United States right now, we're facing a crisis around tolerance and racism. In India, you will face crises. I saw somebody from Nigeria, you will face crises. In that crisis, how do we respond? How do we respond? Do we see that crisis as a threat? And we focus on what's wrong. And on the individual side, we have fear and anxiety and hopelessness and cynicism. We have organizational conditions of psychological risk and malaise and ambiguity, and leadership who are disoriented and agitated. Or can we discover in that crisis opportunities? Instead of the individual emotions of fear and anxiety, can we see hope and optimism? Instead of organizational conditions of psychological malaise, Can we see emotional well-being and creating great cultures? And leadership, instead of being disaffected, can we become engaged as leaders? Our job in HR, in the middle of this crisis, is to help the people, the individuals, our organizations, and our leaders discover opportunity. It's a very interesting mindset. I see some in this crisis looking and saying, oh, it's terrible, what's wrong? I see the thoughtful HR professionals, and this will be the last time I'll say TV Rao's name. I've said it more than he would appreciate. But the thoughtful HR professionals, and I appreciate the work that Proventus is doing with Manu and others to discover opportunity. We have studied that. So what does HR do to create that opportunity? What's next? What are our next steps? And I put this slide up not to highlight or brag about our research, but I see sometimes people coming to HR and saying, I know everything, and I say, where's your data? In fact, one person, and I hope the person's not on the call today, said, I have done research, and I now know what HR should do. And I said, tell me about your research. And he said, I collected data from 20 of my LinkedIn friends. And I thought for a minute, that's not a particularly powerful sample. On this call alone, we have over 2,000 people registered. 20 people who happen to be your friends? No. There is research. And again, in India, you have been preeminent in some of this. There's talent research. We've got data from 450 companies, mostly in Singapore and China and Asia, with hundreds of interventions. We've got data on leadership. We were involved in a study called Top Companies for Leadership over multiple rounds. It was published in Fortune. We've got 30,000 data points on leadership code and brand. We've got data on organizations from 1,200 global companies. And welcome to Human Resources. We have 30 years of data with Wayne Brockbank and helped and sponsored with NHRD in India, co-sponsored with 120,000 people. We know in some ways from our research what's next in HR. Now we have to adapt to that. Now, given all of that, that's the setting. HR is not about HR, it's about creating value. It's about helping us succeed in the changing marketplaces where we live and work. So how do we do that? I am going to suggest a very simple concept. Now let me talk about simplicity because I'm going to cover a lot. I'm going to have a cube that's got 3 elements. It's got principles, deliverables, and actions. Why do I like simplicity? Let me do some things in my home that I can't do very often. I am going to show you my dissertation. Actually, if I were dangerous, I would read you my dissertation. My dissertation is, it was in 1982. It's about what's called numerical taxonomy. I did statistics. I love statistics. I like data. And I did statistics. I did taxonomy. Taxonomy is the science of simplicity. How do you take something that's complex and make it simple? Discovering opportunity in this changing world is very complex. It's got many dimensions. I'm going to suggest 3: principles, deliverables, and actions. And those are the 3 P I'm going to talk about. 5 principles, 3 deliverables, and 2 agendas. By the way, I should also share with you, I keep in my office, welcome to my office, this is a check. When I published my dissertation, the University Microfilms in the early 1980s sold it. It sold, I think, 4. My parents, my wife's parents, and some silly person. I made $11.65. And even back then, I realized I was not going to cash a check for $11. So I keep in my office this check, which represents 2 years of work. For 2 years, I worked on my dissertation to find simplicity. So, 5 principles, 3 deliverables, and 2 agendas. Let me talk about 5 principles. And if I'm listening in your home and hopefully preparing for your evening, I hope you listen and say, boy, that's one I need to think about. That's one I need to get better at. Let me go through the 5 principles. Number 1, coming out of this crisis, wherever you are in the world, we have to get better at tailoring our solutions. This crisis has affected people very differently. Again, I'll give an example. Welcome to my office. I can't always do. This is a picture of my family a few years ago. There's the beautiful wife. There's the ugly husband. There's the 3 children. And we have now 10 grandchildren. My wife and I are obviously older. I noticed in the chat when you were logging on, oh, Dave, I've studied your work for decades. And I think, thank you for reminding me how old I am. And I am older. We live together. We live in a beautiful home. And the 12 weeks of quarantine have not been as difficult for us. I know in India, for example, you've had 2 months now of quarantine. But our daughter, one of our daughters, has 2 children. And she's had to do homeschooling. And it's been very demanding, watching her children and managing her children and training. Another daughter has done homeschooling and with her 3 children, and she found it delightful. Our son, with his 5 children, said, I'm going to work, and my wife's going to do homeschooling, which is kind of a traditional model in their relationship. Everyone is affected by this virus differently. Everyone is different. And so as we return, I hope that ability and sense of customization will endure. Let's treat customers differently. Let's treat employees differently. Principle 2, we need to redefine the boundaries of work. For decades, and even today in some of our minds, we go to work, we're at work, and we return home from work. Work is a place. I think we need to shift that. I think what we're going to find is it doesn't matter where you work. I could work at home, I could work on a bus, I could work in a hotel, I could work in an airport, in a remote site. What matters about work, and there still are boundaries, is the values we care about, the mindset. Am I doing work today that creates value for others, for the customers? Wherever I am, I can create that. And that mindset changes the way I think about where work is done. This example about laying bricks is not mine. I don't know who was the originator of it, but I've heard it from others. Somebody asked a man cutting bricks, what are you doing? And the man or the woman said, I'm laying bricks. They ask another bricklayer, what are you doing? I'm putting up a wall. What are you doing? I'm building a cathedral. Notice the issue is not what work you do or where you do it. It's the mindset about the values that shape what you do. I believe that the key to work today is going to end up being an ecosystem of organizations. Some people will be at home, some will be in a remote site, some will be in headquarters, some will be at a coffee shop somewhere in their country, some will be on a hotel, some will be on an airplane, and all of those separate people in this ecosystem will be connected by a set of values committing to customers. And so the question is not where are you working today, or even how are you working, online or face-to-face. The question is, how did your work today create value for a customer or an investor? That's the shaping I think we're going to see. Principle 3, I think we're going to recognize that we have to learn to navigate paradox. Paradox or tension or duality is such a critical thing, the yin and the yang. It can be seen as oxymorons, and I know I could pick up different words in your country, but big baby, deafening roar, jumbo shrimp, open secret, passively aggressive, tough love. I think they're also paradoxical statements, and I hope I don't offend with these. Samuel Goldwyn was a movie producer. Modern dancing, number 1, is so old-fashioned. Yogi Berra was an American athlete who was kind of a raconteur or a philosopher. Number 2, no one goes to that restaurant anymore. It's always too crowded. 2 things that don't go together. Winston Churchill, a joke is an extremely serious issue. Dolly Parton, a movie actress in the United States. You'd be surprised how much it costs to look this cheap. And again, I hope I don't offend. We live in a world today, coming out of this coronavirus, a paradox. For me, it's like 2 guardrails on a highway. You've got to stay between the 2, depending on what you're trying to do, in the direction you're headed. For example, I've got to care about people. And I see some people right now in the HR field saying, out of this paradox, it's all about people. We've got to care for people. We've got to be oriented to people. We've got to care for the people. Dave, what do you think? I say, yes, you're half right. and we have to attend to the organization. People are the individuals. Organization is the system. In between those two guardrails, we don't want to drive just along one guardrail. We want to use the whole highway, and we have to navigate that paradox. We've got to be bold. We've got to act, no question. As this crisis hit in March and February, we go home, we get on technology, we got to act as the crisis moves. And I just saw some data today about the global recession and the worst economic globally since the 1930s. We got to act, we got to move, and we have to live our values. Absent those values, our actions become irrelevant. We're seeing that right now in the United States with the racial challenges that we face. We've got to converge. We've got to focus. What do I do? We've got to diverge. What could I do? We've got to learn from the past. What worked? We've got to aspire to the future. Navigating those paradoxes allows us to think broadly about what we do. Our job in HR is to make sure we have the skills of paradox navigation and to make sure that we help our business leaders master some of those skills. And I won't bore you with this. You can get copies of the slides or read the ideas. You've got to deal with cognitive complexity. Can I see both sides of an issue? This is so difficult today, especially when emotion is rampant. I've got to be able to see both sides. I've got to be able to see somebody else's point of view. Are we socially endearing? Can we disagree without being disagreeable? My probably closest, one of my 2 or 3 closest professional friends is Wayne Brockbank, I mentioned, who does so much work in India. We disagree at times, but underneath that disagreement is respect, is actually deep affection and love. Number 3, are we socially connected? Am I able to spend time with people who don't think, act, or live like me? I think paradox comes when I can get out of my comfort zone and visit others. Number 4, am I aware of my predispositions? I recognize my psychological bias. I happen to be an introvert, 100%. Until February of this year, I would do calls and I would never show my face because look at my face, you can see why. I've had to get over that. During this coronavirus, I've had to say, I know I'm aware of my predispositions and I've got to see beyond. I've got to be willing to show my face, to let you into my office, to let you into my life. And 5, I've got to be clear about my values. What are my values and how do I respect other people's values? Principle 4, I've got 5 principles. Harness uncertainty. Uncertainty is real. It shapes our lives in huge ways. A lot of people want to give false hope. This is what will happen when this pandemic ends. Other people give up. Between those two extremes is realistic optimism. Our job in HR is to help people harness that uncertainty so they can have optimism about what's going to happen. They can tame the uncertainty and the apprehensions, and they can see uncertainty as a reinvention point, that I can do new things, and the uncertainty allows me to invent and transform. Our job is to harness that uncertainty. And I love the word harness. It's when you jump out of an airplane, you put on a harness to protect you as you float in the sky. Solar energy, wind energy, we harness that energy. By the way, I'm not going to cover this, but there are ways to harness the energy. And principle 5, and through my 5 principles, I need to provide guidance. I need guidance. HR is about analytics and data, but it's not about a scorecard. It's not about a dashboard. It's not even about insights. It's about data that provides guidance. And for me, the example, when I was a younger man, I went to a career guidance counselor. And the counselor said, Dave, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I gave him some ideas. He gave me some tests about my passions, my strengths, my skills. And then he gave me some guidance about my career. Now at my life stage, we think about periodically retirement, which I probably will never do. And I'm betting there are some of you in the same. I'm betting, I said I wouldn't mention his name, I'm betting TV Rao will never retire because we love what we do so much. What are you going to have to do to be ready to retire if you chose? On the bottom left, you've got analytics and telephones. This phone becomes a guidance system for my communications, for my health. We need to create organizational guidance out of this pandemic. that guidance system, and you can go online and begin to do it right now, rbl.ai. I encourage you to go online. Take the test around talent, leadership, organization, HR. Learn what it's going to take to guide us in making better decisions. Okay, let me take a deep breath. I started by saying the world is changing. It is. We have to add value outside in. It's not enough what we do, it's what somebody gets from what we do. That logic of value outside in is so critical. Let me give another example. Value is not defined by what we do, it's what others do. We have grandchildren. A few years ago, our children made me a book. This is a book about my father. And they drew pictures and they put them into a book. That's my family with my father. That's my father tickling toes. He'd wake us up in the morning. That's my father with his truck. That's my father delivering food. Who defines the value of this? Oh, that's my father who now looks like me sleeping in my chair. Who defines the value of this gift? My children made the gift. I define the value. This gift is precious to me because I look at this gift, and one, I can read it to our grandchildren. Two, when I have a chance, and I'm feeling some of that emotion right now, I frankly miss my dad. My dad was my friend, and when I look at the pictures of my dad doing the things he did, I miss my dad. I see my dad with his truck delivering food to the homeless and the needy. The value of this gift is not that my kids made it, it's that it has meaning to me. That's HR. Let me get off of the personal for a minute. HR is not what we do, it's the value we create, especially in the marketplace. In this coronavirus, we have to respond. We have to be different. And there's 5 principles that are critical to that response. We personalize. We change boundaries of work to value. We navigate paradox. We harness uncertainty, and we provide guidance. I hope in those 5 principles, you can see some place where when we go back into this new world, the new normal, or whatever you want to call it, is doing 5 of those principles. I don't know the specific actions, but I know the principles. Oh, take a breath. I feel like stopping for just a minute, and this is unscripted. Ashish or Manu, and I know you, by the way, I know a lot of you are probably multitasking, so I'll give you a chance. Ashish or Manu, any comments or questions about any of those principles? And I've not told you I was going to do this, so this is a little unscripted, but any comments about any of those, Ashish, or any questions that you might see in the chat room that come up? Or Manu. I mean, Proventus is so gracious, and I need to mention Proventus again. Thank you for hosting. But any comments or thoughts? Just 1 or 2, and then I'll go to the next piece.
Yeah.
Dr. Rao, by the way, I've said your name too many times, and I know your parents would not appreciate that, but is there anything you would add? You know India and many of the countries so much better than me. Anything you would add?
No, I like very much all the 5 principles. I think they are very appropriate, Dave. As I was listening to you, once again, the only question I had is how do we build the capability to navigate paradox? I think this is where I think India is a country where people quite often start with very classificatory tendencies, preset mindset. So they already know the answer. So when you have the answer, the navigating paradox becomes difficult. Can you give some hints about how do we develop this capability to navigate?
I'll tell you, I'll share a couple of hints if you'll share a couple of hints. So I will show you mine if you will show me yours. And I'll go first. First of all, I think the principles in paradox is a mindset. It says there is not one right answer. We have to have dialectic. We have to have discussion. So if I'm an HR person in a room and there's a business discussion and the business leaders are talking about competitiveness and cutting costs and managing the cost, my job is to navigate the other guardrail and to say, have we also thought about the implications on people? Now, on the other hand, I've been a couple of executives. They say, it's all about people. All we care about is people. My job is to raise the other guardrail How are we going to do that and manage our costs? So my hint, TB Rao, or Dr. Rao, I apologize. My hint, Dr. Rao, is that we have to be able to navigate across both of those. When we see ourselves or others taking one point of view, force ourselves to the other guardrail.
How to convert data into knowledge?
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is worthy of a longer discussion by far. But I think the issue is not data. It's information that allows us to make decisions. And so I love to say, start with the decision you need to make. I need to make a decision about how to reduce the cost of my company's cost of operations. I need to make a decision about how to serve customers better. If I know what the decision is, then I need information that will allow me to make a better decision. So when people come to me and say, I'm doing HR analytics, here's my statistics, I stop and I say, I don't want to see your statistics. What's the problem you're trying to solve? What's the decision you need to make? And what are the three options? Then your data should allow you to pick the best option. So I don't like to start with data. I like to start with problems and then lead to the solutions. I've given you 5 principles. Thank you, Ashish. What are 3 deliverables of HR? Very, very simple metaphor. There's a meeting being held, and in this meeting, there's a goal for the business, a strategy to increase revenue by customer share, by geographic expansion, by product innovation. Finance says, do we have the money? Marketing says, do we know customers? Operations says, do we have systems? What does HR say? What does HR bring to a business dialogue? Legacy HR is talent. Do we have the right talent, the workforce, the people, the competence, the commitment? I believe we bring more. We bring not only talent, that's my fingers, we also bring organization. And we bring leadership that combines the two. Let me say that again. When I'm in any meeting around business issues, and the business leader or the business team is talking about a business issue, social responsibility, great issue. Customer share, great issue. Geographic expansion. I should ask 3 questions. Do we have the right talent? Do we have the right organization? And do we have the right leadership? Here's the insight. I'll just take 2 of those. Which matters more? My fingers, the individual talent, or the organization, the system? We've done research on that for a number of years. You get a hint by the title of the books. Here's what we discovered. 80-20, 8-2 organization. Talent matters. In the HR field, we have a legacy, the war for talent. Get people, get the ingredients. But the way they come together as an organization matters 4 times as much. So our job, and the leader that does that is critical. Our job when we come to a business discussion is to say, do we have the right talent? Do we have the right organization? And do we have the right leadership? Now, there could be dozens and dozens of hours spent on any of those 3. I'm going to go pretty quickly through 1 or 2 pages on what's happening with talent, with organization and leadership, and just give you a blitz. Again, go to NHRD, go to Proventus, go to the leaders where you are in India and get the details. Talent. A, have we brought the right people into the company? Critical issue. B, are we moving people through the company, through learning and performance, career? And C, are we retaining and appropriately removing people? That's the competence. D, do we keep our employees committed? Are we getting their energy? E, are we getting their meaning and purpose at work? This meaning and purpose, we did a book called The Why of Work, is so critical today. Because it's not just getting a person their hands and their feet, that's the competence. Their commitment is their hands and their feet. They're showing up. The competence is their brain. The commitment is their hands and feet. Their contribution is their heart. Organizations. Are we building the organizations today that respond, that move as quickly as the world we live in? I saw this incident on television probably 2.5 years ago. A woman was in the United States on a beach, happened to be in Florida, could be anywhere in the world. She had an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old son. The two boys, and she had her mother. The two boys got in the water and they got caught in a riptide. They're being pulled out in the ocean. The mother jumped in. She was in the riptide. The grandmother jumped in. 3 or 4 people from the beach jumped in. And now we have 7 or 8 people in a riptide. Notice this beautiful picture, and you can see it on YouTube. Within 2 or 3 minutes, 80 people joined hands. They joined arms. They formed a human chain, and they saved those people. Michael Phelps is the greatest swimmer in Olympic history. 20-some gold medals. He could not have saved those people. The individual talent came together as an organization, and the organization saved those people. I think that simple example captures what we've got to do in organizational form. And this page will just annoy you because it's too busy. I'm in HR. Do we have an organizational form that responds the same way those rescuers did with swimmers? It's not just about hierarchy. That's the rules we have. It's not just about systems. And I've listed some of the books that have shaped that field. It's not just about capability. And again, you see C.K. Prahalad's brilliant work. It's about an ecosystem. It's about building a new organizational species. And Arthur Young, my colleague in China, and I just did a book on that last fall. Can we change the way we organize? And I won't bore you with the 6 details of that. But our job in HR is to create an organization that wins. We have talent, we have organization, and we have leadership. Ultimately, leadership makes almost all the difference. In the Academy Awards, the great movies of the year, 20% of the time, the leading actor or actress who wins the Academy Award is in the movie that wins Movie of the Year. 80% of the time, the leading director of the year is in the movie that wins Movie of the Year. Leadership takes talent and creates organizations. Our metaphor for that is leadership brand. It's not just about the individual leader, it's the organizational system, not just inside, but outside. I love the metaphor of brand because brand is not just what happens, it's the feel and the emotion behind what happens. I'll give an example. I've only shown this for a few weeks. This again is my father. My father was a great man. He was not a high status man. He worked for the government. He did civil service and forestry work. I got a PhD. I'm the only PhD in my family's heritage. I wrote books, and my father gave me a gift. It's this watch. It's not this watch, but it's the same brand. It's called a Timex watch. It is a cheap watch. It costs $20. Every 2 or 3 years, I have to buy another one. And my father gave me that watch, and here's what he said. My dear son, I love you. I appreciate you. But I don't love you because you have a PhD, because you've written books, because you're giving a talk in India to most of the world in your office. I love you because of your character and who you are. Let your brand not be your professional identity. Let it be who you are as a person. And he said, Dave, when you're doing a talk to thousands of people around the world, look at your watch and realize that's not what matters most. What matters most is your character. By the way, I find that very touching. That watch is a brand, but the brand has meaning to me. When our son finished his PhD, and congratulations, Dr. Ralph, for your son, who's also a doctor, I bought my son a Timex watch. And I said to my son, I'm so proud of you. And he said, what? And I said, I'm so proud of you. You finished your PhD, not in 360. His is in another field. But I don't care. What I care about is your character. How are you as a person? How are you as a husband? How are you as a father? How are you as a friend? And look at your watch and remember. By the way, that's the brand. Leaders are meaning makers. They create meaning, they create value, they create purpose. We've done books on the steps to do it. We've created menus of actions. I'm not going to bore you with that. Let me just summarize. The world is changing. In this change, let us discover opportunity through principles. Let us outcome HR through talent, leadership, and organization. Let us create great deliverables in those areas. Now, what does this mean for HR? Two things. And again, this is a very simple framework with lots of data. Can I build the right HR department? And can I demonstrate the right HR competencies or skills? HR departments are so critical. And we've written books, and there's other books about what does a department look like. I noticed in the chat room somebody said, I've read HR Champions. Let me say thank you. I wrote that book in 1996 or 1997. I hate to say it, it's out of date, but it's still got some timeless principles, and we've written other books. Here's what we've discovered. What's evolved over that theory of books. Most people, when they want to build a great HR department, they start with the row highlighted in yellow. Let's design the HR structure. Should we have centers of expertise? Should we have shared services? How do our specialists work with our generalists? Are we centralized? Are we decentralized? Who plays what role? We've discovered in the last 20 years that the design of HR, row 4, is important. But so are the other 8 domains. If you're going to build good HR effectiveness, don't just change the HR structure. What's our reputation? Number 1. What are we known for by our stakeholders? Number 2, who are our customers, both inside and outside, that we serve? What do they value? Number 3, what's our HR mission and purpose? How does it drive the organization? Number 4, structure it right. Number 5, are we creating the right capabilities, those organizational elements for our business? Number 6, have we done good analytics to make better decisions, providing guidance? Number 7, have we created and deployed great HR practices? Number 8, do we have the skills to succeed? I'll talk about in a minute. And number 9, do we have great relationships? I just finished writing this morning a playbook for each of these 9 domains, and or last night late, and I worked on number 9. The message of relationships is so critical. On number 4, the design of HR, we love to get roles clear. We do what's called RACI, responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. I think the relationships in row 9 almost matter more than row clarity. My simple example, my good wife and I should have a picture of my wife. I don't. That's actually a problem. She should be the dominant picture in my office. But my wife and I have been married for 44 years. In 44 years, we have never done RACI. We don't sit down Sunday night and say, shopping, fixing food, doing laundry, paying bills. Who's responsible? Who's accountable? Who's consulted? Don't do it. We have a relationship. She just took a new assignment. She's really busy. This week, I've done some shopping. This week, I did the laundry. You may not see that, but I shop. I do laundry. I did dishes because she's busy. Next week, she may do it. Build the relationship in number 9 to work together in HR and with our others. And my final point, build your skill set. Build your competencies. We've studied HR competencies for 30 years. We've got a lot of data. Here's some of what we discovered. If I'm going to succeed in HR in red, I've got to be a credible activist. I've got to be trusted. I've got to have a point of view. That gets me invited to the discussion. I've got to be a strategic positioner. I've got to know the business, not just enough to know the language of business, but to make decisions and recommend decisions for customers and investors. But in the middle, it comes back to where Dr. Rao commented, I've got to navigate paradox. Paradox are those tensions, and out of those tensions comes innovation and new insight. And if I can manage those tensions and that paradox, that's where I can begin to be successful. Not easy to do. So what's next? We were starting the next round of our HR competence study, and I hope you'll join us. We started in February. We had 3,500 people ready to fill out 360s, 20,000 people data set. We were all excited, and then COVID-19 happened, and we pulled back. So it may be this fall, or it may be January of 2011. We believe that some of the future competencies will be information asymmetry. This is Wayne Brockbank's ideas, and it's to the question, Ashish, that somebody asked. It's not about data, it's about our capacity to collect information that lets us make better decisions. We need to separate signal from noise. There's so many things going on in our lives. What are the 2 or 3 things that matter most? We need to give guidance. And boy, do I hope you'll go on www.rbl.ai. Take one of our instruments, get guidance. We need to anticipate solutions, not just do isolated HR. And finally, and I think getting more prevalent all the time, is social citizenship. We need to recognize that it's not just about profit, it's about purpose, it's about meaning. Whoa. Those are my 5 major points. And I said I'd go for just 1 more minute, and then I'm going to do questions with the panel. And then, Ashish, if I could have 1 minute at the end to wrap up. So let me go through my summary. I want to create a better future. Here's the fundamental assumption. HR is not about HR, it's about creating value. This is my 1 page. In this crisis, there's a jolt. We've got to recognize and respond and find opportunity, not threat. Master the 5 principles. Personalize. I'm not going to remember the 5. Personalize. Navigate paradox. Tame uncertainty. Provide guidance. Redefine work boundaries. We've got to give 3 deliverables. Deliver talent, leadership, and organization to all stakeholders. And we've got 2 agendas. Build a great HR department and create great HR people. You know, that's the time I said I'd stop and do some questions. Let me see. Let me start, if I could, Ashish, out of deep respect and affection. Dr. Rao, any comments? And then Ashish will lead us through questions with the panel. So, Dr. Rao, if you have any comments or questions quickly, then we'll take questions. Ashish, as long as you'd like to go.
No, I think it's wonderful. Talent, organization, and leadership. I like your 9 dimensions of the HR. In fact, the thought that came to me was that it's very important for every HR professional to reflect. And normally, reflection should involve some kind of a feedback from others. Otherwise, we probably will become more of self-perpetuating professionals. I think I find most HR people in India who promoted review and reflection through 360-degree feedback, promoted it for line managers, but often failed to get a 360 done for themselves. So I think this is where I think empathy and compassion is sometimes one wonders is lacking, and that is what creates sometimes negative vibes about HR. So that is the only comment. I'm only reminder of this, Dave, but wonderful. I would strongly recommend a 360 tool to be developed on those 9 dimensions.
We have it, and by the way, Dr. Rao, I understand there's a Dr. Rao Jr. who has great insights on 360 feedback. That's your son and his PhD. Ashish, what questions may come up from the panel, and I will defer to the panel to lead us through those questions.
Yes. So they are joining soon. Meanwhile, let me ask one question, and which is also part of question answer box. This is more to do with the model, which is very famous, and it's obviously kind of copyrighted. The HRBP model, Dave, and most of the organization HRBP, they are used as a kind of more of transaction, but not involved in strategic, not involved in big type of decision making. So what are the top tier 5 quality HRBP need to have it to be on the board, part of the meeting room of the leadership?
Let me give 2 answers. First, we studied the competencies of HR people, and what we found is those competencies in the middle of this slide were the most critical. Credible activist, do I trust you to come to the board meeting? And when you're there, do you have a point of view? Strategic positioner, now that you're at the meeting, what do you talk about? Not just about HR, but about helping position the business to win. And can you navigate the paradoxes that may be part of that meeting? That's the skill set. And it's a really critical skill set. Let me get a specific kind of example. I think sometimes in HR, we gain that credibility and that trust by listening. For example, I'm doing some work with a company, and I talked with their executives yesterday, and they're bringing people back to work. What should we do? I said, the first thing I suggest you do is invite people to a meeting and share their personal experiences. Dr. Rao's comment, empathy, emotion. And I'm going to use a word that I hope people understand the subtlety. Don't just listen to people. Hear people. Listening is what you do with your ears. Hearing is what you do with your heart. When people feel heard, then they'll build the relationship with you. I think we face that right now in the United States, and if you follow news, and you'd have no reason to wherever you are, India or elsewhere, but there's some racial unrest and protest. Those people need to be heard. They need to not just be listened to, but they need to be heard. And that's the piece that I think in HR we can bring with our business leaders.
Yeah. Meanwhile, okay, I'm picking up the question there from the box. Okay, how do we start working on HR research within the organization? One of the area there, in fact, I will admit that India as well. How do we develop our skills where we can do a lot of research within the organization, even as a HR professional body as well?
My sense as we begin, and I think Dr. Rao said it, we begin by changing our mindset. What is it I want to become? What's the value I want to create? For me, it's outside in. I think getting in some data, the 360. I hope people will be interested in participating in the 360. It's free. It's collecting data. We'll give you the data. And then I think what we do is we've got to get guidance about where to start small. And if you go to rbl.ai, you can get guidance around some of the areas. But we need to begin to get guidance. What simple, small steps that are within my control can I take? That may be listening or hearing better. It may be discussing business strategy. It may be building a new talent system. But starting small builds credibility a step at a time. And I think that's where we should begin. The other thing I'd suggest is when we go meet with a business leader, often we share with that business leader our HR recommendations. I don't think that's where we start. I think we start by saying to the business leader, what are you worried about? How do you define your success? And then our job in HR is to help that business leader achieve his or her success through talent, leadership, and organization. I'll turn it back to you, Ashish, for question.
Thank you, Dave. So we have HR leader who joined now. They are from different countries. So Jiten is from Jakarta, Dolphy is from Jakarta, Philippa is from Singapore, Arun is from Singapore, and then we have Jiten is from Dubai. So I would request each one of you to introduce yourself and pick up any question which is there either in chat box or you have some question to ask there. So one by one, please start. Start with Arun.
Dave, thanks so much. It's really a privilege to be hearing you. Thank you so much. And Ashish, thanks for hosting this along with Proventus. I'll pick up a question from the chat group, which also I had in mind. If you are a thought leader, what is the one thing that you wish somebody would have told you 20 years back? So a new joiner in HR, also asked this question. So my question to you is, what is the one thing that you wish somebody would have told you 20 years back?
Arun, can you please introduce yourself, your from company and location if I missed out anything wrong? Yeah.
My name is Arun Dave. I'm part of this company called Daniel Corporation. I'm part of the HR team doing a business partner role. Thank you.
Let me answer, Arun, and ask you to answer as well. So I'll share mine if you'll share yours quickly. I would advise myself two things. Number one, be clear about what you want. Let you define the criteria of success from inside. Don't let somebody else define success for you. And two, relax. I tend to get nervous. I'm sitting here perspiring even now. Relax. It's okay. So what do you want? Relax. What would you tell yourself, Arun?
I would say, Dave, finding a mentor is very important. There's a very nice saying in Bhagavad Gita, which is a religious text for many Indians, which says that finding a good leader and following that path is very critical. So as a young starter, if you are someone who's looking out to do everything on your own, it might take you a lot longer. But if you can find somebody who's a good mentor who can help you and guide you, that could be a possible,
I love the idea. Love the idea. And I started by sharing, guess who my mentor was? CK Prahalad. And I'm not sure if people here knew CK, but there is no better mentor in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, team.
To Jiten, can you...
Sure. Hi. Good evening, Dave. Thank you very much for a very inspiring presentation. I head human capital for a media and entertainment company in Dubai. My question is related to the paradox which you mentioned, and I think it's a big dilemma that now we have between people as well as the organization. As you know that we're going through this tough situation. Obviously, there are stakeholder expectations to be met on one side, and so job security is one thing that we are very concerned that we want to save people's job. At the same point in time, what cut cost is very simply initiatives that we would have launched in the recent past to make our talent and our employees happier. And it's very sad to see actually, and unfortunate that we have to let go of a lot of good things that we would have initiated. As much as leadership is aligned to do the same, but the economic conditions are not helping us to do so. So any active suggestion that how do we really balance this paradox?
Remember that it's a paradox. I see some people in HR say, never let anybody go, never fire anybody.
No.
In fact, in our firm, one of my colleagues was advocating that, and I said, let me name some companies to you. You won't recognize these around the world. Compaq, Digital Equipment, Eastman Kodak, Sears, Toys R Us. What do they all have in common? They're all gone. They're all gone.
Yeah.
They didn't win in the they didn't succeed in the marketplace. Did they have purpose statements? Did they have good HR? Yes, because I consulted for all of them. By the way, my advice is don't hire me because the companies I worked with all ended up in trouble. And that's not the only companies. I hope you can laugh with me. But what a tragedy. And so recognize this is a paradox. Yeah. And I think Dr. Rao said it well. There's not a solution. You navigate. You navigate. Now, having said that, there are some hints. Number one, if possible, save jobs. What that means is, if we have to cut 10% of our labor costs, maybe the employees at the front line take a 3% cut and the executives take a 50% cut.
Right.
I was on a board of directors in the 2008 recession, and we said we've got to cut labor costs because that's the reality. And so what we said is, would you all be willing to take a 0 to 5% pay cut at the front line? The board members and the executives took 50% for 3 months. I think that's a good message. And executives can take more, absorb it more. 2, if you have to let people go, do it quickly. Do it quickly. I was in a company once that said in February, we announced that by June, we would let 10% of our people go. That's really stupid because the good people go get another job.
True.
If you've got to do it quickly, do it fairly, do it with respect. And then pay attention to the employees who stay. My final caveat, if you have to let somebody go, 2 thoughts. Number 1, it should hurt. If you're a business leader and you have to let somebody go, that morning should not be a happy day. I hope we feel the emotional pain of doing it. And I've had to let people go in my firm, and it hurts. And when I've asked leaders, they said, yeah, this is hard. And I've said, I'm so glad it hurts you. The minute it quits hurting you to let an employee go, you shouldn't lead anymore. Now, on the other hand, do it in a way that makes that employee feel good. I wrote a little column. I think a test of leadership is to have a difficult conversation, either about performance or employment, and the employee leave that conversation feeling better about him or herself. That's not easy to do. Anyway, those are some quick thoughts. I wish I had easy answers. That is a very tough paradox. But if all you do is care about people, Digital Equipment Company, Eastman Kodak, Compaq, they're gone. And that's not the answer. I mean, I wish there was an easy solution to that. There's not.
True.
And I hope it hurts. I hope if you're in a position where you have to let people go, I hope you stay awake at night and struggle with it. May you struggle. And the whole emotion with that. Yeah, struggle.
True, very true. And even the whole leadership does it, and we really appreciate. It's very painful for everyone, but we have to do, and this is what we do. And closing statement, I love this notion of yours, so thank you for this one. Thank you.
Thanks, Jiten. Dev, I will move to now Singapore. Felicia, you are there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi again, Dave. Good to see you. Thanks, Ashish. And good evening, good morning, and hello to everybody. My name is Philippa. Please, everyone calls me Pip. Please, Dave, I'm sure you remember, call me Pip. I'm the CEO of People Collider. We educate HR professionals specifically in technology. So not HR tech, but in the basics of technology. Dave, a question. I really agree with your perspective on the 80-20, 80% organization, 20% talent. It rings very true through my career. But I find it, talking about paradox, it's very interesting when you say in principle 1 that we need to personalize work, which in some ways is talking very much to that 20% more so than the 80%. So I'd love you to give some insights into how we can balance that paradox in particular.
You know, that is such a great insight because I think that principle, we do personalize work, but I think we do it around a culture. And I don't know how much time to take, and I'm sorry, I have all the time in the world because it's morning my time, it's late afternoon and evening your time. So I manage that. But let me tell a quick story, and I'll try to do it very quickly. When our son got his PhD, and I gave him a watch, and then he said, Dad, I want another gift. I said, what do you want? He said, I want to go to Disney World with my 4 children at the time. And we said, okay, we'll take you as a gift. Well, our daughter said, I want to go to Disney World. Our other daughter said, I want to go to Disney World. So we show up at Disney World in Florida in the United States with 8 adults and 8 children under 8. It's hot, it's humid, and Mike said, I want to stay on the property. Well, staying on a Disney property, if you've ever done it in Japan, in Europe, in America, it's expensive. The rooms cost double. You get a monorail, you get a little bar of soap with a Mickey Mouse ear carved in it. And I said to Mike, I'll carve Mickey Mouse in soap. Dad, you don't understand. You got to stay on the property and have the experience. We show up, there's 16 of us. I should have the picture. And a woman comes up and says, this is the happiest place on earth. And I looked and I said, not for me. I'm hot, I'm sweaty, I don't get to buy a car this year because I'm spending that amount of money taking this family to Disney World. She said, oh, it's happy. So I'm grouchy. We go around, and I'll quicken this story. We walk into a room because there's a lot of us, and out walks Cinderella, Snow White, and Elsa, dressed. And our granddaughters, who were 8 and 7 and 8 in 3 different families, they stopped, and they were mesmerized, and they stared. And they turned around and they said, Grandpa, they're real and they're beautiful, because they've been reading the books and seeing the movies. Grandpa, thank you. Grandpa, we love you. My heart melted. And then I said, darn it. And why did I go, darn it? Because I knew we'd have to come back. And I wouldn't get to buy a new car for 10 years. Because we kept going to Disney. Now, look, Pip, at that metaphor. Take a step up. What has Disney done? They've created a personalized experience for those granddaughters. They do the books, they do the videos, they show up at Disney. They have employees who look and act like Cinderella and Elsa in Frozen. Why are they doing it? So that those granddaughters will look at their grandfather and say, oh, we now love you, and I'll spend a fortune at Disney. I think they've navigated the personalization for the customer. They've made that real for my grandchildren, and they've made it real for me in a very different way. I'm going to tell you a secret. I don't care a lot about Snow White and Cinderella. I hope that's a fair statement. That's not a part of my life, but I care a lot about my granddaughters. And if my granddaughters have an experience by seeing Snow White and Cinderella, I care. So Disney has customized the customer guest experience, and they've got employees who match that. I think that's the example, Pip, of a challenge of trying to navigate that inherent tension. Oh, by the way, the other thing, they've created that as a culture. That is their organizational identity. Why do we go back? Because we don't need to say the same Snow White and Cinderella. I have no clue what their names are and who they are in person, but they've got a culture at Disney that I'll see that in Los Angeles, I'll see that in Florida, I'll see it in Japan, I'll see it in France. Last summer, and I'm almost done lamenting this, our kids said, oh, we need another family vacation. Let's go on a Disney cruise. Now I can't buy 2 cars because it is so darn expensive. But we walk away. And Disney, I don't know who Snow White and Elsa are, but they've got a culture that works for the customer, the guest, and the employee. Long answer to your question with a quick story.
Thanks for sharing. Hero Dave.
By the way, I love Singapore. Singapore is such a beautiful country. You're lucky to live there. I'm going to tell you a secret. The sun will come up and the sun will go down at 7 o'clock. You're right on the equator every day.
Every day. We'll see you soon. Thank you so much, Ashish. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. We'll move to next question, which will be from our dear partner RK. Yes, over to you, RK.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ulrich. It has been a great pleasure listening to you. A great man. We've been reading about various thought leadership that you have kind of penned down, written for us for the last 2 decades. As Manu rightly said, we were in the thick of HRBP implementation, or whether it is working with HR competency framework. The question that I have, and I've been hearing this last 20 years, and it kind of nags everybody in HR, is that in HR, everybody talks of a seat on the table. And of course, you've spoken about it to be a credible partner, to be able to earn that seat on the table. In your experience, looking back at the last 2 and 3 decades of consulting and working with HR leaders, what do you think is really missing? Or what do you think is the secret ingredient that would really help us earn that seat on the table?
I'm going to give a thank you, by the way, for your great work and your heritage of service. I'm going to suggest that the key to getting a seat at the table is creating value for those who are seated at the table. Getting at the table is not about me. What can I give each man or woman sitting at the table that will help them be successful in their job? I don't want I can tell, well, a quick anecdote. A number of years ago, was talking to an HR person. He said, I finally got to the table. And the first discussion was on the capital structure of the company. How do we fund it? How do we grow it? What are our covenants for economics? I didn't have anything to say, but it was so interesting. The second meeting was on our innovation process, cycle time for commercialization, risk of innovation. That was so interesting. I didn't have anything to say, but that was really great. Third meeting was on global expansion in new markets and how do we go and what do we do. That was a great meeting. I didn't get invited to the fourth meeting. Why not? Because you didn't have anything to say. Here's my takeaway. When you go to that meeting, if you don't know what to say, put in your head three things: talent, leadership, organization. To manage our capital structure and our costs, what does that mean for people, leadership, and Well, I'm going to do this because somebody liked it. What does that mean for, that was jitting. What does that mean for our people? What does that mean for our organization? What does that mean for leadership? We're gonna manage our product innovation cycle. What does that mean for people? What does that mean for organization, leadership? Whatever the question is, people, organization, leadership. And I think unless we can have that discussion, we're not going to get invited back. Anyway, quick answer.
Thank you, Dave. So we'll have last question from Dolphy. Sorry, that will be second last, and the last question will be from Dr. TV Rao. Dolphy, over to you. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, hi. Good morning, Dave. Thank you very much, Ashish, as well as Proventus HR. I'm Dolphy from Jakarta. I work for Good Hope, and we do have around 14,000 employees working around across the different countries. My question is, I think before that I wanted to tell Dave that I did stay in Disneyland Tokyo with my kids. I think they do create experience. Secondly, we do have a coined words called capturing hearts and minds to our employees. And during these 3 to 4 months, we were able to create value to the organization by ensuring each and every employee and their families are safe. We don't create that kind of a job insecurity, as well as we made sure to each and every employee that they are important to the organization and they need to follow protocol what is under COVID. Now my question is that we were able to create this value to the organization. How do we continue to do as HR leaders?
Great question, and I love Jakarta. I have done work with Suwardi Lewis at GML, and I'm doing a session with boards of directors there in a week. So it's great to see people from Jakarta. What a beautiful, beautiful country. I think we start, again, by reinventing ourselves, by looking outside, not inside. Outside says, how are our customers changing? In the COVID crisis, customers are changing. How are our employees changing? Or how are our markets changing? How are our investors changing? And the reinvention is not because we reinvent, it's because the market requires reinvention. And by keeping that outside point of view, we change to stay consistent with what those external demands are. For example, in education, right now in the United States, almost all education is virtual, not in person. Well, I'm going to have to change. I'm not used to doing this, showing little pictures and telling stories and showing books about my father. That's not my style, but that's what it requires in this market to do good work. I think I change inside because the market outside changes. And I think, Dolphy, if we can keep people in HR focused outside in, we adapt to that outside world.
Thank you. I think that was a good answer.
Oh, I'm glad.
Thank you. Thank you, Dolphy. Thanks for asking that question. Okay. Dr. TV Rao, so over to you. This is the last question.
It's so wonderful listening to you, Dave. I think enjoyed every bit of whatever you have said. I have a totally unrelated question to this theme. In India, we have a large number of these professional bodies, one of which you are associated, the National HRD Network, and then the NIPM, ISTD, and so on. And then we have universities which prepare students for HR. How do you see the role of both the professional bodies and the universities in preparing most successful HR people? What is it that they should be doing? I notice I didn't find you much active in SHRM, but I think you have done so much wonderful work, and maybe that I'm sure every one of them will be using it. But any quick response, any quick thoughts?
Thank you. And I know in India there's many HR associations and universities and groups who are doing great work.
Yes.
My hope, and frankly, I think in some ways it's good to have multiple groups. I think the competition is healthy, as is the collaboration. I hope HR professional associations are less about making money and more about moving the profession forward. I think if an HR professional association worries first about making money by selling seats in workshops or selling services, I think they lose track of their real value. The value of an association is to create a vision of what the future can become. And I hope that and I've been associated with some associations, as you said, in India, and the agenda is to create a vision of what the HR future is. Quick anecdote, quick story, and I'm trying to answer with stories so they're more memorable. Some people who want to go forward look at, or some prophets, if I can use religious example from any religion, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, Hindu, Buddhism, they tell people they have to repent or they're going to go to hell. Other prophets say, here's the vision of heaven, let me help you get there. I hope in HR we're more the second prophet. We don't tell people they have to change or they're going to hell. We tell people, here's the vision of heaven, and here's how you can get on that pathway. That's what I hope an association does. They don't tell us what's wrong and get better. They tell us what's possible and help us get the pathway to go there. I feel that quite strongly.
It's
By the way,
very
Dr.
rare.
Rao, I feel like that's what, yeah, there's things wrong in HR. People say, Dave, you don't understand, there's things wrong in HR. And my comment is, there are, but I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on what's right and what's that vision of a better future and how do I help people get there? Because if I start focusing on what's wrong, it becomes almost a cycle of negativity. I don't want to be negative. I want to be realistic, but I want to head forward. Ashish,
Wonderful.
this has been a marvelous conversation.
Excellent. Dave, I must share one small thing. I think, Ashish, I can't but say this. Almost several years ago, I wrote to Dave to review one of my books. You know, the reply I got was that Dave said that I'm doing community work for 2 years. I have taken sabbatical and I'm not doing any professional work. That was such a great example. Later, Dave, you corrected me to say it was 3 years. So those 3 years when you were in, I think, Canada somewhere, totally devoted to community. And I keep suggesting to my HR friends, if you want to be a good HR professional, please serve the community at least for a little while in a year. If not, you take a sabbatical and so on. Because the best way to understand people is by doing community work. Otherwise, I think you're aspiring to get a seat at the table is only I would even say a little bit of a foolish wish because you are not even understood people. So thanks a lot. I keep saying, Dave, you are a role model. You are not only a HR researcher, you are a practitioner setting an example for most of the people. And I wish many of our friends in India learned many of these things from you, besides from your writings. Wonderful talking to you, Dave. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Those 3 years in Canada were remarkable. They were remarkable years. So no regrets. Incredible years. Ashish, we've gone a long time. I know it's late at night and people are ready to sleep. By the way, probably given the questions and my responses, we have helped people sleep better. And our job is to help people sleep by talking.
The next question is kind of rapid fire. If you have 3 functions in front of you, which function will you pick up? That guy is a CEO of the organization, HR, finance, and marketing.
Yes.
Which one?
All 3. I think you weave the 3 together, and I'd add a 4th: HR, finance, marketing, and technology, information.
Yeah.
And I think they come together as well. Thank you, my dear friends. I'm going to end with one thought. I love to ask people, what was the best year of your life? And some people say, when I was 18 and at the height of my energy, when I was in college, when I was newlywed. One person a few weeks ago said, when I was no longer married. So that's kind of a bad answer. Here's my answer. The best year of your life is the next year. Let me say it again. The best year of your life, no matter what age you are, is the next year. The next 12 months. And that's my hope for HR. The best is yet ahead. The best is yet ahead. Now, some people have said they can't get slides. Go to rbl.net. Go to rbl.net, and you can look through and probably find the slides. So, thank you. Very nice.
All right, thank you. Dr. Rao, great seeing you again.
I think it's a great job here. I think today it's wonderful. I think a lot of lessons from a whole lot. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thanks a lot. I think you're facilitating this. Whatever Ashish is doing, I think through you, it's so wonderful.